Season 1 of Dexter follows Dexter Morgan, a forensics analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department who lives a double life as a serial killer. However, he only murders those who evade the law. So I only just finished watching Dexter for the first time a couple of weeks back, and I watched all of Dexter, New Blood, Original Sin, and the first 4 episodes of Resurrection in the span of about 6 weeks. This show grabbed me instantly, and I literally could not stop watching. Anytime I had about an hour to spare in a day, I would find a way to squeeze in another episode of Dexter. So over the next couple of weeks, as Dexter Resurrection Season 1 continues to air, and eventually will wrap up in about 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be reviewing all 8 seasons of the original show, New Blood, Original Sin, and once Season 1 of Resurrection's done, I'll be reviewing that as well, and then I'll be doing a ranking at the very end. So got a lot of Dexter coming along now, and I cannot wait to talk about this franchise, so let's get into it. Let's get into the highs and the very lows of the Dexter franchise, starting with Season 1. And starting off with what I love about Dexter, and the thing I have to mention first is the anchor of the entire show. All 8 seasons, New Blood, even Original Sin, and obviously Resurrection, and that is Michael C. Hall's performance as Dexter. He's likable. He's extremely funny, but he can also be very intimidating. He gets this kind of look in his eye where you start to connect with him so much throughout the show, and then you see him just in a different light sometimes, and all of a sudden your stomach just drops. You're like, you forget that he is a monster. You forget that he is a serial killer. And he does such a great job at balancing all of that and making him feel like a lived-in person. And one of my favorite aspects of his performance is just how unbelievably awkward he is, to the point that the most entertaining part of the show for me is his interactions and his awkward interactions with everyone. And I just find it so funny. And I think that, as I said, Michael C. Hall is the anchor of this entire franchise. And if he didn't give us one of the greatest performances of all time, this show would be nothing. And following on from that is the character of Dexter himself. He's such a great character. He's one of my favorite characters in any TV show ever. He has layers upon layers of depth, and Season 1 does a really good job at slowly peeling back those layers, where earlier on you'll start getting these weird flashes that make no sense whatsoever, but then by the end of the season you learn more about what those flashes mean, and it ends up making sense. It makes sense as to why Dexter is the way he is. And I just think that slow reveal of who he is and what his defining moment was with... Sorry, spoiler alert for this entire show as well. I should have said that at the start, but spoiler alert, I'll be talking about these seasons in depth. The event which made him the way he is was sitting in a shipping container watching his mother get chainsawed alive. And she was dismembered, and him and his brother were sitting in a pile of their mother's blood for 2 days. And that's led to this fascination with blood, that he was so young at that moment that he didn't really remember it all that well. But throughout the show, and he starts seeing more and more blood, eventually revealed by, his brothers trying to reconnect with him. And that's why he is what he is. That's why he loves watching the blood flow. That's why he loves killing. He feels this weird connection with blood because he was effectively born in it. And beyond that, he just has this very autistic quality about him that makes him seem so real. And I already mentioned it with Michael C. Hall's performance. He obviously nails it. But it's so funny. It leads to some great comic relief in some parts. But it never loses sight of the fact that he's not necessarily, not to diagnose, I'm not a doctor. He's not necessarily autistic. It's just that his humanity was taken from him at such a young age. So he tries his best to imitate other people. And sometimes he fits in, sometimes he sticks out like a sore thumb. So he's such a great character, and I love the way he evolves over this season. I absolutely love the premise of this show as well. It's very dark, but it's so intriguing. Just the concept that we are following a serial killer who only kills other serial killers. And it does a really good job at making you think about life and death in an interesting way, where it's like, some people deserve to live, and honest to God, some people don't. And I think that's really good because it taps into this sort of taboo idea. Some people have this idea that all human life should be valued, and this show challenges that, to say the least, because there are some people in this show that he brutalizes that they deserve to die. All of the people that Dexter takes out are so despicable and horrid that it makes him look like an angel. Some people won't be able to get past the fact that you're following a serial killer as your main character and he's made out to be a good guy, but I think it's great. I think it's very thought-provoking, and most of the time, what he does, I have to admit, it is justified. The story of season 1 too, with the ice truck killer, is so ridiculous in the best possible way. You know about this guy who is killing people, and he drives around in an ice truck and he drains all the blood from the bodies. And at the end of the first episode, you learnt that this ice truck killer knows about Dexter, knows about his secret as a double life as a serial killer, and breaks into his apartment and leaves him like a little game. Like, do you want to play? And I was just so unsure of where the hell this was going to go, because I was just like, what the fuck? Like, this is insane. This is ridiculous. And as the series progresses, all of the ice truck killer's crime scenes are like based off of photos from Dexter's childhood. And Dexter slowly comes to realize this, but he can't tell the police about that or his colleagues because that would risk his own double life being exposed. So it just leaves you wondering, what the fuck is going on? How does this random killer know Dexter? How does he know his secret? How does he know all about his childhood and everything like that? It's just so ridiculous and over the top, but as I said, in the best way possible. Like, I just got so sucked into this mystery. And when eventually you do get all the reveals and the twists and turns that come out, it really sticks the landing. That's one thing that Dexter, in general, I think, has trouble with, is sticking the landing at the end of a season. I think season 2 ends on a bit of a whimper. 3 sort of does as well. So does 5, 6, and obviously 8. But season 1 of Dexter absolutely knocks it out of the park with its finale, Born Free. And you get the reveal that the ice truck killer is actually Dexter's biological brother, who also witnessed their mother die, get chopped up into pieces by a chainsaw when they were younger, but he was older and he remembers every detail of it. And in the same way that Dexter is fascinated by blood because he almost wasn't old enough to be able to process what it is when he saw that happen, Brian is repulsed by blood and he drains the victims of all of their blood and puts it down his drain that he's got in his walk-in freezer. So it's such an interesting reveal, and it ends up being surprisingly tragic in its own twisted way. Brian Moses' story is so fucking sad. Brian was considered too damaged to be rehabilitated properly, so he was passed around a bunch of foster homes, and then eventually everyone just gave up and put him in this mental institution. And all he wanted to do, well, not all he wanted to do, but his main goal was to reconnect with his brother, was to be able to bond with someone who experienced the same thing that he did, because no one else would understand what that's like. And as soon as he finally reconnects with his brother and realizes that his brother is like him, is a serial killer as well, he's like overjoyed, and he just entices him in this little game to get them to connect with each other without raising any alarm bells. And Dexter has this choice, because now there is one other person alive who knows his secret, who knows who he is, who understands him for what he is. And yes, he is the only person alive who knows Dexter's secret. He's the only person alive who understands him. Fuck Dr. Vogel. We'll get to that later. And Dexter ultimately chooses to save his adoptive sister, who he has gained proper emotions for, even though he says that he doesn't feel things. He slowly comes to realize that he actually does. He chooses her over his biological brother, who accepts who he is. And it's such a tragic decision, because then you look at Brian's story and it's just like everything he was doing was all for nothing. Like, he's the most twisted and fucked up person. Like, he is nuts. But when he's having his throat slit and he's lying on the table and his blood's being drained, his blood is being drained, you can't help but like feel really sad for both him and Dexter. And I think that's incredible that a story that is so balls to the walls, wacky, or, as I said, borderline ridiculous and over the top, manages to be so impactful in the end. I really love all the flashbacks that come throughout this season and also in season 2, but there is something so off about them. It's almost like the camera has this weird sweatiness to them. It uses a lot of close-ups, almost as though it is a bit of a vague memory. And you just get more and more bits of how Harry has raised Dexter. And at first, it makes sense, sort of, like you're like, okay, this guy, he's obviously picked up that there is something wrong with Dexter. He may be a psychopath, and if Dexter lashes out and hurts someone, he could get the death penalty. So he wants to protect his son from that. And then it slowly becomes apparent that Harry almost wants Dexter to be a psychopath because he wants to use him as a vigilante machine, basically, which is completely fucked. And I know there are some differing opinions in that, but that's how I feel. I really do believe that Harry didn't give Dexter a proper chance to be normal or be fixed. And it just becomes so interesting because Harry appears as this proper stand-up guy. And then you just learn these dark things about him. And I think those flashbacks are so interesting. And especially with Dexter, he never viewed Harry as anything other than, you know, the greatest man in the world. And him starting to realize some things as the show goes on is really interesting and it ends up being pretty tragic again as well, especially in season 2. But I really love the flashbacks. I love James Remar and I love Harry's character. I really love almost all of the other characters as well. You've got Angel Batista, who doesn't always get the most prolific arc season to season, but as the show progresses and goes from season 1 to Resurrection, he's such a well-written character. And I just love little things about his character in season 1 where you learn that him and his wife have split up, and it's because of one horrible mistake that he made. But he never tells anyone that. The only person who finds out about this is Dexter when Dexter tries to drop him home after celebrating his pay rise, and his wife goes, he doesn't live here anymore. And it's almost comforting for Dexter to know that he's not the only person with secrets. And I really liked that. I thought that was really quite a clever way to put on it, because Dexter's always treats himself as a lone wolf, and he's like, no, maybe you're not as alone as you think you are. You got Masuka here, who is mostly just comic relief throughout the show. I don't care. C.S. Lee is absolutely hilarious. Every second that Masuka is on screen is great. He is so good. Then, of course, you've got Sergeant Dokes. Surprise, motherfucker! Who is he might be my favourite character in the show, to be honest, just for the fact that everything that comes out of his mouth is pure comedy gold. I wish we got so much more of him in the show. It makes sense why they decided to cut off his storyline where they did, but I really wish that he was a mainstay for the entire thing, because he is so funny, and Eric King's performance is hilarious. I love the way he dresses. I love the way he always wears really tight shirts that expose his muscles. He always has his gun holster over the top. He's always got the tight belt that show his ass. He's always walking around. What the fuck you doing? Get the fuck over here. He's just so funny. I love him. You also get introduced to Maria LaGuerta in this season, who is actually one of my favorite characters in the entire show, just for how much the writers constantly get the audience to change their tune on her. She starts off as a fucking bitch, and then as things go on, you kind of start to like her, and then you really don't again. I just love a character that is so hard to read, and it eventually becomes that her career is her life, and she will stop at nothing to get to the top. She will, put other people in bad situations for her own gain, but she surprisingly has a conscience about it, which is just really interesting. I think she's a fascinating character to read into. And of course, you get to meet Rita, who is initially Dexter's girlfriend, just to have a girlfriend. She's someone who's damaged as well, and Deb thought that Dexter and Rita would connect, so they spend time with each other, and Dexter spends time with their kids, and their relationship, Asta and Cody's relationship with Dexter is hilarious because Dexter is just so much more comfortable talking to kids who have a much lower emotional intelligence than other adults. And obviously with Rita's character, she ends up kind of bringing out the proper feelings in Dexter. Like Dexter, Harry constantly said to him, you're emotionless, but you've got to pretend like you have emotions. And then the more time he spends with Rita, he realizes that she actually brings proper emotions out of him. And she's such a great character. She's one of the best parts of the show for sure. And I really love how she's introduced in season 1 and how she develops throughout the show from, pretty badly beaten wife to a really strong, compelling character who takes life into her own hands. And I think she's great. I already kind of touched on this earlier, but this show is fucking hilarious. It is so funny. Every single scene, as I said, with Masuka is hilarious. Everything with Dokes is hilarious. Dexter's internal monologues are hilarious always. It's such a likable show because it's almost always making you laugh, which is surprising. And finally, I love the music in this show as well. You've got that sort of Cuban music, but then you've got the really slow blood theme, which is always stuck in my head. I love that. It just so perfectly fits Dexter. And then, of course, you got that great opening credits song with the cooking montage of his morning routine, and it's all filmed to make it look like when he's tying his shoes, it looks like he's strangling someone. And yeah, obviously the music that goes over that is great as well. It's a very iconic and catchy title theme. Now, the only mixed element that I have on season 1, I actually don't have anything that I'm negative on. I really love this season. I think it's brilliant. But I do have one character who I am so mixed on, and that is Deborah Morgan. Jennifer Carpenter gives a really, really great performance. And I do love how she's the polar opposite to Dexter. Like, she is overly emotional, she is loud, she is vulgar, she's promiscuous, and Dexter's very quiet and doesn't say a lot and, doesn't, at least at first, doesn't sleep around. But I have 2 major issues with her character. And the first of which being that she really doesn't have that much to do in this season. Like, she sort of is telling Dexter that he's not open enough with her and stuff like that, and that she doesn't feel like she connects with him as well as they used to. That's about as much character work as she really gets. And then, obviously, she gets kidnapped by the ice truck killer, and that's the main thing that happens to her in this season, is that she is the one that gets kidnapped by Brian. And my second and main problem with her is this. She is so fucking annoying. I cannot stand her. She is cocky, loud, demanding, invasive, impulsive, volatile. She is the most unlikable person to the point that I was half hoping that the rest of the show would follow Dexter and Brian on their little adventures and they'd just tell Deb to fuck off and kill her. Now, this is a problem that I had a lot worse when I first watched season 1, because as the show goes on, her behavior starts to make more sense when you learn more about her and how her and Harry were not very close and how Harry sort of neglected her, and it starts to make sense why she's so demanding and invasive and needy for attention. But as I said, she doesn't really have a hell of a lot to do in this season aside from being a fucking bitch. And that's kind of the problem, is that I would have needed a little bit more meat on the bones of her character to be able to tolerate her. And it wasn't until I, got through a few more seasons that I realized why she is the way she is. So I think the performance is great. I think the character ends up being a really well-written character as the show progresses. But season 1, she annoyed the living fuck out of me. So overall, season 1 of Dexter is a brilliant season of TV. It's darkly hilarious, excruciatingly suspenseful, unpredictable, and it introduces us to one of the greatest anti-heroes of all time. Dexter season 1 is top-notch. Thanks for watching my review on Dexter Season 1. I cannot wait to keep talking about the rest of these seasons with you. I don't know when my review of Season 2 will be out, but I think it'll be in the pretty near future. So look forward to that, and I'll see you all later. Bye.